think you know who the greatest rock artists of all time are? You've heard the names your whole life, but what if the order was wrong? What if the artist sitting at number one almost never made it? What if fame, pain, and pure stubbornness decided this list more than talent ever did? These aren't just musicians.
That once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw, plowing through the ragged sky.
These are people who bled for their art, who fought the industry, fought each other, fought themselves, and still changed the world forever. This is not a popularity contest. This is the truth. These are the top 10 greatest rock artists of all time. Number 10, Jimi Hendrix.
You know you are a cute little heartbreaker.
Close your eyes for a second. It is 1969. You are standing in a muddy field in Woodstock, New York. 500,000 people around you. The sun is barely up. And then you hear it. A guitar, but not just any guitar. A guitar screaming the American national anthem like it has never been screamed before. That was Jimi Hendrix. And if you were there that morning, you never forgot it.
You are a cute little heartbreaker.
Here is the wild thing about Jimi. He only had 4 years in the spotlight. 4. From 1967 to 1970, that is it. In that tiny window, he released Are You Experienced Axis, Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland, 3 albums that broke every rule rock music had ever written. He recorded at Olympic Studios in London and his own Electric Lady Studios in New York.
Oh, shucks, Foxy.
His label was Track Records in the UK and Reprise in the States. His producer, Chaz Chandler, yes, the bass player from The Animals, spotted him in a New York club and flew him to England to make him a star. Jimi did not just play guitar, he attacked it. He played behind his back with his teeth and then set it on fire at Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. And that was only his second major American performance.
I made up my mind.
Rolling Stone named him the greatest guitarist who ever lived, not top 5. Number 1, full stop. Here is something that still blows people's minds. Jimi Hendrix was almost entirely self-taught. No formal lessons, no music school, just a boy from Seattle, Washington, who taught himself by listening to blues records and never stopped pushing.
Do you know?
He died in September 1970 at just 27 years old, and the world of rock music was never the same. Imagine what he could have done with another 40 years. The thought alone is heartbreaking. Stay with me, because the next artist on this list nearly walked away from music entirely before he ever became a legend. Number 9, Bruce Springsteen. If Jimi Hendrix was fire, Bruce Springsteen is the long, slow burn, the kind that keeps you warm on a cold night when everything else has gone dark. Bruce has always been the guy who writes songs for the person who works a dead-end job, drives a beat-up car, and still dares to dream, and that is exactly why his music has lasted 50 years. The album that changed everything was Born to Run, released in 1975 on Columbia Records. Produced by Springsteen himself alongside John Landau and Mike Appel at the record plant in New York. Columbia Records was actually considering dropping him before that album came out. Think about that. They almost let the boss go. Born to Run saved his career and theirs at the same time. It hit number 3 on the Billboard 200, and Springsteen landed on the covers of both Time and Newsweek in the same week, something almost no rock artist had ever done. Bruce has won 20 Grammy Awards and an Academy Award. He is one of the very few rock artists in history to win a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award. He still plays concerts that run 3 hours long, and he is in his mid-70s. 3 hours. No set list, just pure rock and roll heart. The fun fact here, Bruce Springsteen was rejected from the music program at Ocean County College in New Jersey. They told him he did not fit in. He went home and kept playing guitar in his bedroom instead. And sometimes the rejection is the best thing that ever happens to you. The next entry is a man who crossed every border music ever drew, and he did it all wearing black. Number 8, Johnny Cash.
An old cowboy went riding out one dark and windy day.
There is something about Johnny Cash that just feels permanent, like a mountain, like something that was always there and will always be there. The Man in Black. Even saying that name, you can hear that low, rolling voice. You can see the man standing alone on a stage in all black, holding one guitar, owning the whole room without even trying.
And up a cloudy draw.
Cash started at Sun Records in Memphis in 1955, recorded alongside Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins, 4 men who basically invented rock and roll in the same building at the same time. Sam Phillips was the producer. The studio was a tiny room on Union Avenue, and history was made there on a shoestring budget.
All the riders coming hard, and they heard their mournful cry.
Cash was signed to Columbia Records from 1958 onward, where he released his most iconic work, including the live album at Folsom Prison in 1968, recorded in front of real prisoners and one of the greatest live albums ever made. Then in the 1990s, something remarkable happened. Producer Rick Rubin, the man behind Run DMC and the Beastie Boys, signed Cash to his American Recordings label. People thought it was a strange match. It was genius. The stripped-back acoustic recordings introduced Johnny Cash to a whole new generation. His cover of 9 Inch Nails' Hurt became one of the most emotional music videos ever made.
Look, we sweat. He's riding hard to catch that hurt, but he ain't.
When Trent Reznor, who wrote that song, watched Cash's version, he said it no longer felt like his song anymore. That is power. Cash was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992 and has sold over 90 million records worldwide. Not bad for a boy who grew up picking cotton in Kingsland, Arkansas.
Bulls herd across these endless skies.
If you are enjoying this so far, go ahead and smash that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it means the world to this channel. Number 7, Prince, there is no one else on this list quite like Prince Rogers Nelson. Nobody. The man was in a category entirely by himself. He could play over 27 instruments, not as a party trick, as a working musician. He played most of the instruments on his early albums himself, completely alone in a studio. He was the band.
I see you laughing, babe. I only want it one time.
Purple Rain came out in 1984 on Warner Brothers Records, produced by Prince himself at Sunset Sound and Flying Cloud Drive Warehouse in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It spent 24 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200. 24 weeks. The accompanying film won Prince an Academy Award for Best Original Song Score. He was 26 years old. At 26, the man won an Oscar. But here is the side of Prince that your parents might have lived through and that younger fans do not always know. In the 1990s, Prince went to war with Warner Brothers Records over the ownership of his masters, the original recordings of his music. The label owned them. He did not. He was furious. So he changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol, wrote the word slave on his face during public appearances, and refused to release new music under the name Prince while the contract held. The music industry had never seen anything like it. He was telling the world, "These songs are my blood, and no corporation owns my blood." He eventually broke free from Warner Brothers and released music independently. But he became one of the first major rock artists to understand what artist ownership really meant, decades before Taylor Swift made it a global conversation. Prince was doing it in the 90s. He passed away in April 2016 at his Paisley Park estate in Minnesota, leaving behind a vault of unreleased recordings so large that experts say it would take decades to release it all. The music is still in there, waiting. Next up, the man who did not just make rock and roll. He made rock and roll possible. Number 6, Elvis Presley.
Well, that's all right, mama. That's all right with you.
You know, there is a reason they still call him the king 50 years after his death. It is not just nostalgia. It is because no single human being did more to turn rock and roll from a regional sound into a worldwide explosion. Elvis Presley did not just ride the wave, he was the wave. He walked into Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee in 1953, technically to record a personal demo for his mother's birthday, and Sam Phillips immediately knew something was different about this young man. By 1956, Elvis was on RCA Victor Records, working with producer Steve Sholes, and the world was already changing. That's All Right. His first commercial release was a record that blended country, rhythm and blues, and gospel in a way that had never been done before, at least not on that stage for that audience. Radio programmers did not even know which chart to put it on. Elvis had 18 #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. He holds the record for the most Hot 100 top 40 entries of any solo artist in history, 114. His television appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1956 were watched by over 60 million people in a country of under 200 million. 60 million people watching one man. Here's the thing people forget. Elvis won 3 Grammy Awards, and all 3 were for gospel recordings, not rock, not pop, gospel. The man's real love was the church, and it showed in everything he did. We are halfway through this countdown now. Which artist has hit you the hardest so far? Drop it in the comments below. I want to know. Number 5, Chuck Berry. Berry is the architect, the man who drew the blueprints. Without Chuck Berry, there is no Elvis, no Beatles, no Rolling Stones, no Led Zeppelin. You trace every power chord, every duck walk guitar riff, every road trip rock anthem back to one man in St. Louis, Missouri in the 1950s, and that man is Charles Edward Anderson Berry. He signed with Chess Records in Chicago in 1955, one of the most important independent labels in American music history, known for its raw, the electric blues and rhythm and blues recordings. Producer Leonard Chess and his brother Phil ran the label, and they knew exactly what Chuck Berry had. Maybelline came out in 1955 and went straight to #1. Then came Roll Over Beethoven, Johnny B. Good, rock and roll music. Back in the USA, one stone-cold classic after another, recorded in Chess Studios on South Michigan Avenue. Johnny B. Good is so important to rock music that in 1977, NASA put it on the Voyager Golden Record, a golden disc launched into space carrying sounds from Earth meant to represent humanity to any alien civilization that might find it. When scientists had to choose what music to send into the universe, they chose Chuck Berry. Think about that for a moment. John Lennon once said that if you tried to give rock and roll another name, you might as well just call it Chuck Berry. The Beatles covered his songs. The Rolling Stones covered his songs. Keith Richards has said more than once that Chuck Berry taught him everything he knows about guitar. And yet, when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened in 1986, Chuck Berry was the very first artist inducted. First, as it should be. The next man on this list changed not just rock music, but the entire idea of what a song could say and who could say it. Number 4, Bob Dylan.
Drinking champagne.
Some artists make music you like. Bob Dylan made music that made you think differently about the world, about war, about justice, about love, about what it means to be alive. He was not just a songwriter, he was a mirror held up to America, and America did not always like what it saw, but it could not look away. Dylan signed with Columbia Records in 1961 in New York City at just 20 years old.
Any minute now, I'm expecting.
Producer John Hammond, the same man who signed Billie Holiday and would later sign Bruce Springsteen, believed in him from day one. His early acoustic albums were rooted in folk tradition, but in 1965, everything changed. Dylan walked onto the stage at the Newport Folk Festival with an electric band and played rock and roll.
Just thought I saw something for a second there. Ooh.
The folk crowd booed. Some people said he had sold out. Dylan kept playing. He did not care. Highway 61 Revisited came out in 1965. Blonde on Blonde in 1966. Blood on the Tracks in 1975. These are not just good albums. These are considered by music critics and historians to be among the greatest works of art produced in the 20th century.
Come get up, gentlemen, I'm only.
In 2016, Bob Dylan became the only rock artist in history to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, not a music award, literature. The Swedish Academy said his songs had created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. Dylan has charted on the Billboard Hot 100 in 6 consecutive decades. From the 1960s all the way to the 2020s, that is not a career. That is a civilization.
I've been walking foot in my.
He has sold over 125 million albums worldwide, and in 2020, he sold his entire songwriting catalog to Universal Music Publishing Group for an estimated $300 million. $300 million for songs he wrote in his bedroom in Hibbing, Minnesota as a teenager. We are getting into the top 3 now, and I promise you, this is where it gets serious. Number 3, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, when you're sitting there and you're
Here is something no other band on this list can say. The Rolling Stones have been a working rock and roll band since 1962. That is over 60 years. Mick Jagger is still strutting across stages. Keith Richards is still playing that open G tuning like he invented it, because in many ways he did. Charlie Watts kept the beat until the day he died in 2021, and the band carried on in his honor.
don't see me in my ragged company.
You cannot kill the Rolling Stones. They are rock music's cockroaches, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. The Stones were formed in London, deeply rooted in American blues, Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson, Howlin' Wolf. They took that sound and fed it through British rock energy to create something entirely new. They signed with Decca Records in the UK and London Records in the US. Producer Andrew Loog Oldham shaped their early rebellious image. Later, would producer Jimmy Miller, the man also responsible for Traffic, helped deliver their greatest artistic run: Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and Exile on Main Street, recorded in a rented chateau in the south of France with a mobile recording studio parked outside. That is rock and roll mythology right there. They have sold over 250 million records worldwide.
In that sun, Kentucky Derby Day.
Yet the Stones held the record for the highest-grossing concert tour of all time with the A Bigger Bang Tour from 2005 to 2007, which earned over $550 million, and they later broke their own record with the No Filter Tour. They are still the biggest live rock act on the planet. But here is something the history books do not always mention. 1967, both Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were arrested on drug charges in England in a case that many people believe was deliberately orchestrated to destroy the band. The British establishment was deeply uncomfortable with everything the Rolling Stones represented: the attitude, the sexuality, the defiance. Jagger was sentenced to 3 months in prison. Times of London ran an editorial with the headline, "Who Breaks a Butterfly on a Wheel?" defending Jagger and accusing the authorities of targeting him because of his fame and influence. The conviction was eventually overturned, but the message was clear: rock and roll frightened people in power. And that was exactly the point. That is why this band is not just music. They are a piece of living history. 2 spots left, and both of them are going to stop you in your tracks. Number 2, Led Zeppelin. When the Levee Breaks. The first time you hear this song properly, not as background music, not in passing, but really hear it with your full attention, it is a physical experience. The drums arrive before anything else, and they do not sound like a drum kit in a studio. They sound like the sky fell. And then the guitars and Plant's voice come in on top, and the whole thing moves like deep water, slow, inevitable, and like something that decided to happen a long time ago and has been making its way towards you ever since. Facts and Context, released in 1971 on Atlantic Records as part of Led Zeppelin 4, the album with no official title. No band name on the cover, just 4 hand-drawn symbols. The song was produced by Jimmy Page and recorded at a crumbling old manor house in Hampshire called Headley Grange. The song is an adaptation of a 1929 blues recording by Memphis Minnie and Kansas Joe McCoy. All steeped in the imagery of the Great Mississippi River floods of 1927, walls of water destroying entire communities, people losing everything, nature indifferent to human suffering. The drum track was recorded with John Bonham's kit set up in a 3-story stone stairwell with microphones pointed at the ceiling. The sound that came back through the monitors stopped everyone cold. Engineers who were there have said it was like capturing a natural disaster on magnetic tape. The song has been sampled across hip-hop and rock for 50 years, most famously by the Beastie Boys. It has appeared in television dramas, films, sports broadcasts, and that drum sound has never been fully recreated. Never. People have come close. Nobody has done it. Jimmy Page and engineer Andy Johns spent hours that night just listening to playbacks of the drums in disbelief. They kept running the tape back, just the drums, nothing else yet. Because what was coming off that tape sounded physically impossible. The combination of that specific stone stairwell, the height of the ceiling, the way the sound bounced off walls that were centuries old, it happened once and then it was gone. Some sounds only exist in one moment, in one room, and then never again. This was one of them. Controversy segment, now. We need to talk about something real. I told you this entry was going to go somewhere that requires us to hold 2 things at once: the absolute greatness of what Led Zeppelin created and the complicated story of how some of it was made. I am going to be balanced. I am going to be fair, but I am going to be honest. Led Zeppelin grew up on American blues music. All four of them loved it. Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon. These were not casual influences. They were the foundation. Jimmy Page talked about the blues with genuine reverence his entire career, that love is real and audible in everything they recorded, but there is a but. Some of Led Zeppelin's early recordings were built closely on the work of Black American blues artists who were not always given writing credits in the original album releases. There are different versions of this story depending on who you ask. In interviews over the years, band members have addressed it in varying ways. Some acknowledged it directly. Some framed it within the oral tradition of the blues and where songs were passed between musicians across generations without formal ownership, the same way folk music had always worked. The documented record shows this. When the Levee Breaks is an adaptation of a Memphis Minnie recording from 1929. Memphis Minnie, a black woman from Mississippi who recorded prolifically during the Depression era, is now officially credited as a co-writer on the Led Zeppelin recording, but that credit came after considerable pressure and was not always present in the earliest printings. Whole Lotta Love, like one of their most famous tracks, shares significant structural DNA with a Willie Dixon composition. Dixon took legal action. It was settled out of court. But he received credit and compensation decades after the original recording. Dixon spent much of his later career pursuing legal rights to his own compositions across the industry, calling it his life's work alongside the music. Here is the context. Almost every major British rock act of the 1960s built on American blues material. The Stones, the Animals, Cream, all of them. The entire British invasion was rooted in Black American music. And the blues tradition itself had always operated through oral sharing, through musicians learning from musicians, through songs evolving across communities over decades in ways that predate modern copyright law entirely. But the blues artists who created those original recordings were almost always black men and women from the American South who made their music with almost no legal protection and very little financial reward. Yet when British rock bands took that same material to audiences of millions in arenas, on albums that sold globally, on television screens around the world, the financial gap between what the originators received and what the rock acts received was enormous. In many cases, it was not personal malice. It was a system built over decades, designed to extract value from black creativity without proper compensation. None of this erases what Led Zeppelin created. Yet A Stairway to Heaven is not a blues adaptation. Kashmir is not a blues adaptation. When the Levee Breaks as they recorded it is a transformation so complete, it stands as an original work of genius. The skill and the power of what Page, Plant, Jones, and Bonham built together is real and irreducible. But the full story includes this chapter. It includes the names of the people whose foundations were built upon. Memphis Minnie deserves to be in this conversation every time when the Levee Breaks is mentioned. Willie Dixon deserves to be in this conversation every time Whole Lotta Love is played on a radio. They are not footnotes. They are the ground the house was built on. That is why this music is not just great art. It is complicated history, and the most honest thing we can do with it is hold both of those truths at the same time. Why underrated? Here is the part of Led Zeppelin that gets buried under the mythology of the excess and the tours and the enormity of the legend, the tenderness, the acoustic work on Bron Y.R. Stomp, the vulnerability in Tangerine, the fact that John Paul Jones was one of the most gifted arrangers working in any genre during that entire decade, not just a bass player standing in the back of a stage. The fact that Jimmy Page thought about albums the way architects think about buildings, every section in relation to every other section, every quiet moment designed to make the loud moments land harder. And when John Bonham died in September 1980 at 32 years old, they stopped completely. No replacement auditions, no announcement of a new direction. 2 months later, they issued a statement: without John, it was impossible to continue. That decision of choosing integrity over commerce, grief over survival, is the most human thing any band on this list ever did. There will never be another one, and they knew it before the rest of us did. We have one left, and if you have been watching this whole countdown and you are not already smiling because you know exactly what is coming, then I envy you, because you are about to hear this for the first time all over again.
Hey, Rocklore community. Before we continue, let's have a real talk for a second, bro. You know, this isn't just a channel to us. And I hope it's not just a place you come to watch a video and then forget about it. This is a community. It's a place where we get to dig up the secrets of rock and roll, share our favorite riffs, and celebrate the artists who maybe didn't get the love they deserved. Right now, only about 1% of our viewers are subscribed. We can change that together and grow this community. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button with the notification bell on. When you do, you're not just helping a channel grow, you're becoming a member of the Rocklore family. You're signaling to us and to YouTube that these stories matter, that this music is worth preserving, and that this community is a place you want to be. Subscribing is your way of making sure you're always in the loop. It means you'll be the first to know when we unearth a forgotten legend, drop a new countdown, or dive into a piece of rock history you've never heard before. So if you're a true fan of the lore, if you get that same feeling of discovery that I do, then come join us. It takes 1 second to be a part of something bigger.
Number 1, The Beatles. It was never really a debate, was it? John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr. 4 young men from Liverpool, England, who changed everything. Not just rock music, everything. The way albums were made, the way music was sold, the way concerts were held, the way artists were allowed to dress, think, speak, and protest. The Beatles did not just top the charts, they rewrote the rules of what a popular artist could be.
No one understands Jackknife.
They were signed to Parlophone Records in the UK in 1962 by producer George Martin, a classically trained musician who understood how to translate the Beatles' raw energy into something that worked on record. In the United States, they came out on Capitol Records.
Big man, walking in the park.
Their first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th, 1964, was watched by 73 million Americans. That was nearly 40% of the entire U.S. population at the time. The country stopped, literally stopped, and it never fully recovered. On April 4th, 1964, the Beatles held the top 5 spots on the Billboard Hot 100 simultaneously.
What you have gotta do, you can talk to me.
5 out of 5. The number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 songs in America were all Beatles songs. That has never happened before or since. It is the kind of statistic that sounds made up until you look it up and realize it is completely true. They recorded primarily at EMI Studios, and now called Abbey Road Studios, in London, with George Martin at the desk.
Hey, bulldog,
creative evolution from Please Please Me in 1963 to Abbey Road in 1969 is unlike anything else in music history. In 7 years, they went from teenagers playing skiffle in Liverpool pubs to orchestral rock composers writing pieces that still confuse and inspire music professors today. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967 is widely considered the greatest rock album ever made.
Some kind of solitude is measured out in you.
It was one of the first concept albums. It changed how artists thought about the long-playing record as an art form. They have sold over 600 million records worldwide, with more than any music act in history. They hold the record for the most #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 with 20. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988, their very first year of eligibility. They are the best-selling recording artists of all time. And with the 2023 AI-assisted release of Now and Then, their final new song, they proved that even death cannot stop the Beatles from releasing music. They were part of people's lives. Part of their love stories and their heartbreaks and their memories of being young. That is the kind of artist you have to be to earn the #1 spot on any list like this. Not just successful, not just talented, essential.